This is Grief and Grit, from heartache to high fives with a dash of sass. The podcast that turns the tables on traditional grief talks with a fresh, sassy spin. Listen in for candid conversations about the messy, awkward, and downright hilarious aspects of dealing with loss. Because sometimes the best way to cope is with a little laughter and a lot of grit.
Hi, Simonie.
Hi, Greer. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. Thank you.
I cannot tell you how excited I am for this episode.
I know. You've been chomping at the bit since we decided on it.
Oh my gosh. Y'all, it doesn't even matter that I have coffee or tea or anything right now because we're just jumping in. We're talking about signs and mediumship and all the amazing things that have really helped me connect with Jared since he left. And I cannot wait. Simonie's gonna introduce our speaker, but I'm so excited.
I know. And it's gonna be wonderful. And this is we're so appreciative. And today we have a wonderful longtime friend of mine. Our families go back many, many, many years. Janis Cohen, and she is just incredible. She's an intuitive therapist. She goes by the intuitive therapist. She has her own podcast. She has books, and she's a therapist that is a psychic, a clairvoyant, and decided to group all that together and in that way helps people on so many different levels. And I know she's helped me in the very beginning when Mark had been gone maybe 2 years, and Janis had a great connection, and we spoke to Mark, and so we're very grateful, we're very honored, and we're so excited to have you with us, Janis. So thank you.
I'm happy to be here. It's been just wonderful to see this come to fruition. I know this is something, Simonie, and Greer, this is our first time meeting, but Simonie and we had a reading however many years ago it was, and all of this came through, and to be able to witness how this is finally coming to fruition is just a blessing for me. So happy to be on here. It's great.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you.
Yes.
And so Janis, if you want to just speak to our audience a little bit and tell us how you started, how you got into this. What was the signs for you?
Yeah. So I had been a traditional therapist for about 17, 18 years of my career. And about 16 years ago, when I turned 40, I'm telling my age, y'all.
And for those of you who can't see Janis, you would never believe that.
It's true.
She is glamour on steroids and always clean.
It's so silly. No, it's silly. So at 40, all of a sudden, my gifts opened up. It's a longer story, but I'm going to shorten it because we're just talking about mediumship and all of that. And so at 40, all of a sudden, my third eye opened. I now know what that is, right? I started seeing things, hearing things, feeling things, knowing things, and also speaking to the dead, people who've crossed over. And I had been a student of spiritual development since I was 25, but just guided. First started with the tarot deck, and then just different veins of my life led to spiritual development, books, attending conferences, those kinds of things. But 2008 was a pivotal year. It was the year that my soul decided it was time it was safe enough, let's put it that way, for my gifts to be heard and seen. And I had to learn about my gifts, the moment they opened, my life changed. It was as if who I had always been had become again, right? And so it wasn't like I had to change anything about my life. It was just, this is who I am, right? And so I had to learn that I was a medium, because I would be doing these readings and people would come in accurate data, all of that. And I'm like, I was working with a a psychic reading group that would happen once a month. And so I had a lot of mentors around me. I'm like, what is this? And what is that? And why is that? And they're like, Janis, you're a psychic medium. You could see things. And I'm like, get out. How cool is this? And so the work that I did with my clients, it literally catapulted them. What would take a therapist, a traditional therapist, 6 months to a year to 2 years to achieve. It was like this stuff was happening in 30 minutes.
Wow.
This stuff was happening in 10 minutes. The shifts and the insights and the clarity with my clients was just happening so fast. And so once I kind of learned about my gifts and abilities, then I was like, okay, I'm all in. This is it. This is who I am. And so and of course, the more I channeled, the more confident I got. And so here I am now, 16 years later from that point, doing this work, not just mediumship work, but really incorporating my gifts with my clients so that they can make fierce and rapid progress.
Incredible. Go ahead.
And I'm sure that, there's skepticism out there, and, people who, don't believe in it. And right?
Those are my favorite kind of people, in all honesty. I love it.
How do you, have you, how do you explain to people, or even listeners today who are like, yeah, whatever, like, for us, we
Sure.
we believe in it 1000%.
Yeah. I love skeptics, and I love skeptics because I end up shifting into a position of, and this is how I do my work. Simonie, you know me, I'm very, very direct. So Greer, this is how I roll. It's just straight up direct, right?
Perfect.
I have no interest in convincing anybody of anything. I don't care if you believe or you don't. If you're coming to me, Spirit's going to speak through me. That's just how it goes. And you can believe it or not. That's up to you. But in my experience, when skeptics show up, there's a skeptic who's guarded and who really is testing me, or there's a skeptic who's on some level knows that there's more to this than what they know, and they're more open. So it depends which kind of skeptic I encounter, but I don't take responsibility for what somebody believes or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know my gifts. I know how God uses me. And as long as I stay in my lane and my integrity as a channel, I'm good. And usually if somebody comes to me as a skeptic, it doesn't go in my head. My ego has nothing to do with it. It's like, no, this is what I do. You've come here. I'm going to share with you what comes through.
And they leave a believer, no doubt.
Amazing.
Yeah, but 100%. Yeah.
So, okay. So getting into mediumship and the role that it plays in grief, how does connecting with a loved one through mediumship support someone through their grief? And then I'm also curious are there specific signs or messages that are common that you hear from people, themes, things like that?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the two of you can attest to any readings you've had, right? So it's kind of like and this is as well for me too. My father passed 6 years ago. It'll be 7 next year. And so even though I've been very, very connected, especially to my father, especially after he passed, but I think that it is so incredibly healing when you receive a very, very specific detail from a total stranger.
Yes.
I think, and I've experienced this over and over and over again when people have come to me, there's such a desperate feeling to have a connection to someone you love who's passed, right? Because when we lose them in the physical world, it's like somebody has just yanked your breath out, and it doesn't matter how long it is, pain changes over time, but it's still that you never stop grieving. Anybody who says I'm over the grief or That's just not true. You'll never get over it. So when
Right.
you have somebody who is a relative stranger, or somebody, even if you know, who has the ability to communicate with people who've passed, and they tell you something specific, like, when we started, I said, Simonie, does Mark call you darling? And I
Right.
didn't know, because I'm like, well, wait a minute. My mind was like, Simonie always uses that word, darling, darling, darling. I'm like, maybe Mark did. So I shared that with you, and you're like, yeah, he did. And so it's one of those things that when a medium gives you information that they would not have otherwise known unless they access the portal, right? Something so specific. Or I have found that when I've done transmediumship, and transmediumship is when the energy of the person who's passed has occupied my body. And so I've shown up even in their mannerisms. My mannerisms have
Wow.
changed.
Oh my gosh.
The voice has changed. The words I use change. And then all of a sudden, someone on the other end, and I'm looking at them, and they start to cry, or they start to smile. And it's something that I can't in my own mind predict or justify.
Mm,
It's beautiful.
that is
Like,
beautiful.
holy crap, you are connected, right? And I'm not tooting my own horn. This happens for all the valid mediums out there. It's like, it is the biggest gift on our end to be able to be an open channel to share those very, very specific things that a layperson or somebody who's not plugged in wouldn't know. And you asked about the signs. I think some of the very typical signs are, you'll see coins
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
on the ground. You'll see feathers.
Yes, very
You'll
much
see
for us.
red cardinals.
Yep.
Yep. Greer.
That's
Yep.
mine.
Butterflies,
Yep.
dragonflies, right? Rainbows, of course, people will see those too. I think those are really the most, thank you. Songs, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
there's a song that I just got chills again. That connects you to the person. All of a sudden, you'll see it. And I have a story about this. I'll tell you a little bit about just how my dad shows up, just so this kind of explains it.
Yeah.
Before I reconnected with my now husband, um, and I was single, my dad would, back in the day, okay, my dad died when he was 85. So back in the day, he used to wear brute cologne. And those of us that are of this generation know what that is and what that smells like. It's like the Old Spice of that time, right?
Right.
So my father would show up always on my left, and it was this wafting smell of that cologne,
Wow.
right? Brute cologne. And he
Mhm.
would work with me. He would stay with me. And the song that actually defined my dad's life was My Way. And so that has always carried through. And every time we hear, we think of my dad. There was a trip that I went on, and I just wanted my dad to be with me. I just needed to know. And so before I got on the plane, I went to the bathroom, right? As we should, to prepare for the long flight. And I'm sitting there in the stall, and I'm hearing this instrumental song. I'm like, what's that?
Oh my
And all of a
gosh.
sudden, I get out of the stall, and I hear the chorus of My Way instrumental. Like,
Wow.
holy crap. Thank you,
So
Dad.
crazy.
Then at another point on the trip, I'll never forget this. I was sitting there, we were in this Mexican restaurant, and I'm eating, and all of a sudden the song My Way comes playing in Spanish.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's
Wow.
those kinds of things. It's like you
Mm.
cannot, you can't explain those. So there are so many different kinds of things. Sometimes lights might flicker, right? So
Yeah.
that your loved one is like, hey, I'm here, or
Wow.
maybe there'll be an object that's moved,
Mm-hmm.
or a book will fall out of a bookcase to an exact page where maybe their name is showing up. It could be anything. Signs are very, very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of that, but there are some general signs, that that the spirit shows when they're present.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that if you like Greer and myself, then and you open to it,
Yeah.
the signs are there, or some people call it God winks, and
Oh, I like
yeah,
that.
so they are there. And just if I can share a little story of
Yes.
mine, talking about songs,
Yeah.
when it was Saul, who's my middle child, when it was his bar mitzvah, and I was looking for a venue, I walked into this one venue, and it was beautiful to host the party, and I just woke up that morning thinking to myself, I need some guidance, what to do. It was my first celebration without Mark, excuse me, and I walked into the venue, sat down, and my wedding song came on.
Oh, it
Yeah.
just feels.
I know. My wedding song came on,
It's
and
that. Yes.
yeah, and I signed there and then. I didn't ask another question. I was like, this
Yeah.
is where it's meant to be.
Right. But so many people, there are no coincidences in this human experience. People will call it coincidences, but they don't understand that everything is connected, right? And so if you become a student of life, and if you see everything that happens in life as an opportunity to learn and connect and grow, then these things that happen, these signs, right, these synchronicities, you'll be able to go, okay, thank you. There will be no discounting.
Right.
You will not talk yourself out of anything because, and my family makes fun of me because I see so much. I see so much, and they make fun of me about whether or not this is a sign or that is a sign, and they had to adjust
Mm-hmm.
to me kind of coming out spiritually. Like my family wasn't used to it, but when you're so certain that there is a connection from your loved ones on the other side, you're certain of it, then you're going to be able to accept and acknowledge and revere the signs that show up. You have to talk yourself out of it. So that is beautiful. Okay, so they're showing me, and I don't know if this is connected to you, Greer, or not. They're showing me an apple and a heart. Do you understand that? Oh, I don't know. Apple pie, heart. There's something.
Not apple, but there's another something that starts with an A.
Okay. Okay.
Should I
Okay.
tell you?
Yeah, of course.
Avocado
Okay.
and hearts. That's like big. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like that. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know what that means.
Right.
And I'll tell you this, I know we're going to talk about how you get to the right medium or this or that, but it's I trust what comes. I don't question it anymore. I don't question anything. I know that if spirit gives me an image or a word, it's useful, and I share it. Now I talked about apple and a heart. I'm like, I kept seeing this red heart, this red heart, this red heart, and then they showed me the red apple. There's something. So I don't know if that's about
Okay.
health or whatever, but you were able to validate that, right? And
Yeah.
while it may not have been the right symbol,
Could be. Yeah.
um, uh, and they could go together, the apple and the heart, you see, in terms of, um, okay, now they're starting to, so I don't know if there was bypass surgery, there was something connected to the heart. Do you understand that?
So no bypass surgery, but definitely heart
Okay,
something.
so
Yeah.
that's a symbol that they're sharing with me what happened with your loved one.
Okay. He did. Yeah. Jared went into cardiac arrest. He did die from heart. Yeah. Yeah.
There was fog stuff. Yeah. So they were showing me there's something about the apple. And
Interesting.
when mediums share information, much of the time, we will share through metaphors and
Yeah.
symbols,
Okay.
right? And so just like the metaphor, the symbol comes out, then the information is dissected. It's shared in pieces when the other person kind of validates. It's almost like the floodgates open when somebody says, oh yeah, well, it's this, but not that. And then boom, right? And sometimes that's my way, right? And then there are other mediums who are just spot on, and they go right in. So every medium is different, but he says hello from up here, by the way, Greg.
Aw, thank
Oh,
Hello
you,
from up
Jared.
here. I see you.
There's
Job,
a
It's like, good
it
job.
Aw, thanks. I my first mediumship experience was around the first anniversary of Jared's death, and I remember the medium was explaining something like a memory or something to connect me to spirit, and I was not really following. She was like, "It's a deli counter," and then finally she kept trying to describe what she was seeing, and I realized, oh my God, it was like one of our favorite restaurants in Athens, like at University of Georgia. And when it clicked, I was like, oh my God. And the medium told me that oftentimes spirit will explain things through what the medium knows, not necessarily what the recipient
Yes,
knows,
sure, sure,
because the
sure.
medium's the one having to explain it. So what's the closest thing that they can describe it as? And so I don't know if that's something that you agree with, or I just thought it was very interesting when she said that.
Yeah, I think that, and I also think that there's some very, very direct signs that
Mhm.
the receiver, the seeker, will get,
Oh,
that
yes.
only they know.
Yeah.
That's come through.
So I have a story about a song as well, if I can share. So our first wedding anniversary after Jared died, I rented a hotel just for myself to like escape from the world. And so I'm in the hotel one night catching up on Emily in Paris. And all of a sudden I hear our song. And our song was a secret song. Like it's not one that we danced to at our wedding or anything like that. It was just between us. We
Yeah.
both loved the movie and the play once. And it's the Falling Slowly song. And all of a sudden, like on Emily in Paris, they start singing this song, like playing the song. And I'm like, oh
yeah.
my God. And I just started bawling like these happy tears, like, oh my
Yes.
God, thank you. And then like within that same period of time, I also was doing a little like retail therapy, and I walked in. I there's a favorite bookstore that we really liked. So I walked inside, and the first thing that catches my eye is a card with two pandas side by side, their backs to you. And it said something like, we'll always love you or something like that. And I bought the card. Like I was like, that's the anniversary card that you would have given me. Like,
Yeah.
because my favorite animals, pandas. And he gave me
Amazing.
panda cards all the time.
And not
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, there's no way I could ignore
No,
that. And
no.
it's no way it could be
A
a
coincidence.
coincidence.
No.
Those two things, I knew that he was sending me love and comfort for our anniversary.
Yeah.
Like, and that was the hardest for me after he died. So I feel like he was really like trying to overcompensate with the signs. I'm
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
those are big ones, Jared. Thank you.
First year after you lose a loved one it changes everything. It
Mhm.
changes how you live in the world. It changes
Mhm.
it changes everything. And the firsts, you both know, the first of everything that year, they're the most difficult, right? So
Yeah.
that's a lot of times that's when the energy of your loved one will come in the strongest, because they know they're good up there, by the way. Like
Mhm.
the minute the minute they transit up into heaven, uh they're good because they're out of the human body. Their energy is free. The
Mhm.
Right.
soul is always intact.
Mhm.
Right.
That their human experience, right? They have to leave their body. So,
Mhm.
but they know that we are still in this human plane, struggling, suffering to really uh, remedy our pain, right? Our the love of our life has just been ripped out, right? So
Mhm.
that they tend to show up the most during that time.
Have you ever had a session where somebody comes in hoping to connect with a particular loved one and they don't come through?
Yes. Yeah. And I'll tell you, there are could be a lot of reasons, but what I have found is that um, when a person's been through a lot, who's transitioned to the other side, sometimes they don't show up because they're doing the work. And what I mean by that is when a spirit crosses over to the other side, they have to face their life. It's called a life review.
Oh, wow.
So they have to get to work. Like
Interesting.
God just doesn't welcome you there and go, oh, you're good. It's like, oh no. You have a lot of past life stuff to deal with. And
Yeah.
whatever you didn't write in this world, in this existence, in this lifetime, is the work we got to do. Because we figure out when you need to come back to finish it. Those are called karmic lessons. So there have been times where I have been asked to do a reading to connect with a person, and I literally see their backs are turned because they're not ready,
Right.
or they don't want to speak.
Yeah.
They don't want to. They're like they just maybe they have nothing to say. Maybe it's enough that I see them and the energy is, I'm here. I'm just not ready to talk.
Interesting.
And so for me, because I'm 16 years without Mark now, it's literally a whole lifetime. But my fear has always been like, it's 16 years. It feels like he's got further and further and further away. So does there come a point where there is no more earthly connection?
Yeah.
You will always spiritually, energetically be connected to Mark. What I have found, and this happened with my dad, what I found is that they are around when we most need them. And as we grow, as we become more settled, as our grief shifts, changes, lessens, right? They don't need to be around so much.
Yeah.
That is,
It's not that you're disconnected at all, because you can connect to Mark in a moment and you can connect to Jared in a moment, simply with thought. You could connect through the feeling. You could call them in, and there may be no evidence of it except for a feeling that you have, right? But your loved one, I'm getting chills on this, there's never going to be a disconnect.
right.
Ever, 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 ever. Their presence might lighten up because you are doing well.
I've
Right.
noticed that recently, and I've also been feeling like I'm in a really good place. Like I was
Yes.
talking to my psychiatrist last week, and I was telling her all the way, like all the things and how I'm feeling, and like I feel good right now, which is like,
Yay.
especially around a holiday season,
Yeah.
this is a first for me.
Wow.
And I haven't seen many cardinals or many signs recently, and I'm like, what's going on, Jared? Like, are you still there? But that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're, your loved one is a thought away, literally.
Yeah.
And if I've often asked, okay, show me a sign, show me this, that, and the other, and sometimes the signs show up immediately, and sometimes there's a delay, so that when you're not looking for it, when you're not pushing the energy, it's like your mind is otherwise occupied. Boom, there's a sign. Do you see? That's how the mind works. That's how receiving works. Your left brain is the thinking mind, right? That's the part that tries to process everything. And I'm not a brain surgeon or brain expert. In terms of the work that I do, it's like our left brain is very analytical, logical, linear, and our right brain is very, very creative, right? That's how we express ourselves. So when our left brain is occupied, maybe we're folding laundry, maybe we're driving in the car, maybe we're, I don't know, paying a bill, and all of a sudden, boom, there's the idea. Well, that's how we channel information, right? So just know your loved ones hear you. They hear you every single moment, all the time, up, down, left, and right. They see you, they hear you, they know you, they feel you. on the human plane, again, as we grow and heal, and I'm not a big fan of that word heal. I'll tell you why in a minute. But as we move through the grief to a point where we have created some semblance of stability and homeostasis,
Right.
our loved ones are like, okay, I'm back off. I'm back off. Right. I want to speak to this healing piece because just so listeners can understand this, it's an interesting way to see how things in life resolve. Those are the words that my team is giving me. And so I like to look at life as completing incomplete emotional experiences. And by that, I mean that whatever kind of trigger or pain or grief you still have, clearly something is not resolved. An emotional piece is not resolved. And so we get to look at that, right? So once we complete an incomplete emotional experience, we no longer feel triggered. We're not as sad. We've accepted certain reality. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't believe in this healing thing. I just don't. I've been doing this for 33 years.
Right.
I feel like I got a little experience behind me when I say that.
For sure.
Grief is the process of growing into a different version of who you are.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
Right?
love that.
So there is great sadness, of course, in grief, but there's also, again, if you're a student of life, you're going to learn what the impact of the loss has on you. And for some people, maybe it's I had become overly dependent on my partner. And so their loss pushed me to become very independent and on my own and build that confidence or to be able to start a fund or a business or an advocacy group. Do you see things like you're doing? Do you see?
Purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
So
The
while
purpose in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding the purpose.
So,
Yeah.
so while we don't always know what that is, at some point, if we allow ourselves for it to be revealed, knowing that we're not being punished, even though it feels like we're being punished, that we're really not, that is part of the human experience for birth and death. And how do I figure out what it means for me?
Mm-hmm.
That's when grief becomes less.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
That is.
And
yeah.
that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. Because then it just becomes part of your DNA. It becomes part of, it becomes the new you.
Exactly. Yeah. You're transformed forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you allow it to transform you.
Yeah.
If you allow
how it impacts you.
if you allow yourself to grow from it, and that's not always easy, but you do become a whole. I always say, if Mark could see who I am now compared to who I was then, he would never believe it. He would literally.
So here's the thing. I love that you said that, because as humans, we think that they can't see us because we still are relating as the human body, the physical 3D, right? But they're up there in the 5D. They have no body. So their energy is ever present because, again, our souls never die.
Never.
So in the human form, we would like for it to know that in the human form they can see us, they can feel us, they can hear us, all of it. That's the 3D piece that we as humans have a hard time moving on from.
Correct.
When I tell you, because I've been there myself, I'm like, I wish my dad could see me now, and I wish this, that, and the other, and that never ends. And when you know the truth that the energetic part of a soul doesn't die, it can't, it just doesn't. It either ascends and becomes an angelic guide to those that are here on earth, or it comes back in angelic form to help people on this earthly plane, or it comes back to complete the incomplete experiences, the karmic lessons, right? Maybe there are more choices than that, but at least that's what I know. There's always that connection. So when you say, when anyone says, I just wish they could see me, You're saying, I just wish I knew in this physical form that they see me.
Mm.
Just wish I knew, like I would love to be able to see Mark, be able to see Jared and have them say, oh, great job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the difference. But they do. When you feel proud of yourself, you have to understand, so does the person who passed. When you've had a loving relationship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
That makes sense.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
So a question around managing expectations, and again, my first experience, I was so nervous and like tightly wound when I logged on, and the medium, she could tell, and she said, like, okay, just take some deep breaths. I need for you to, try to be more at peace, because otherwise, like, it's not going to work. And thankfully I was able to. But like, what should someone expect when working with a medium? Like, for those that have never done it before, what advice would you give them?
I would expect for them to feel exactly how you did.
Okay.
I would expect for them to be in such a state of desperation, to want to know that they're not alone, and such a sense of desperation that please let this person be the person where I can reconnect with the person that I've loved. It's that.
Yeah.
It's that. And it's like, and then of course, the second piece is, I just want to know that the loved one who has passed is proud of me, sees me, recognizes me, and I want proof of that. So anybody that goes into a reading has expectations.
Okay.
So don't not have them. You're going to have them. It's just a matter of how guarded you are in terms of, or how anxious you are. And it's okay to be anxious, because quote unquote, they're saying you have a lot riding on this. Your happiness is hinged on the kind of information you get from the medium.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and when you're in acute pain, and I attribute acute pain to, of course, the first 2 weeks of loss, but then it's really that first year, because you're still in acute pain. It's not the shock of the first few weeks,
Correct.
right? It's different. So, in terms of seeker expectations, you're going to have them. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to want to be able to have this person share something so specific that you're like, oh shit, excuse my language, that is my loved one.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I didn't tell anybody that I had the ring in my pocket, or the tattoo on my arm, or, I was wearing the necklace that they wore. Here you go, right? So when we have that kind of validation, and all mediums are different, by the way. Some mediums will pick up on jewelry, and some people will be more personal. Like, they'll show through as the energy, and that may be valid enough, validity enough. But as far as what to look for in a medium, it's kind of like the way I think about it is, of course, you want to be able to follow your intuition. How does this feel like the right choice for me to make? And of course, referrals.
Yeah.
Right? Who has seen this person?
Right.
What's their experience been? That kind of thing. So I say those kind of expectations.
Because I would imagine that there are a few mediums out there that are just not the real deal.
Yeah.
And they can cause a lot of harm.
Right.
Sure. That's with any kind of profession. Like, there's some there anyway, in any profession there are duds, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So there's certain mediums that will be very, very general, and they'll, it'll feel nice, but you're not getting anything specific from them to really say, oh, they are really plugged in to my loved one, right? They'll speak very globally. He's proud of you. She's proud of you. You're doing a good job. And you're like, what am I paying you for this? Right. You want specifics. You want specifics that you could understand. And there are unethical mediums who tell you things they shouldn't tell you. We as channels, we feel the weight of the energy of the words of whether or not we should say them.
Right.
I can be, a spirit could tell me something and I know I'm not to tell it, but I know.
Oh, right.
Right. So if I, for example, if somebody, I don't know, wants a medical reading, right, and they want me to scan their body, and they want to know if they're in ill health, spirit will give me a general kind of thing versus saying, yeah, you got 6 months. Although I've had
Right.
people come to me as well and say, when am I going to die? Because they were going to die when, and spirit gave me very, very clear, specific information.
Wow.
That ended up being the case, right? So there you have to, as mediums, as channels, as psychics, we have to be able to feel the difference of the energy of what is supposed to be shared and how. We are given very specific, at least for me, I'm given very, very specific words and language to share with each person I encounter.
Right.
And there's certain energy behind the words that I give, that only they can understand. It's almost like the word is the word, but the energy behind it will be given in such a way that they can digest it.
100%.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's how spirit works through me.
And how do you protect yourself? Because, how do you manage to cut yourself? Like, I'm sure during the day you could be in a grocery store and there's a man picking out cheese and you get a sense or, something in spirit comes through for that man. But how do you, because there's got to be a way that you can shut it off for yourself, for your own well-being.
Yeah. There, I will, and I'm actually kind of quite glad that this doesn't happen to me. I am not like the Long Island medium who just does mediumship 100% of the time as an open vessel and picks up on dead people around. I
Yeah.
don't, and I'm
Right.
grateful for that. It's not that I wouldn't welcome that if that were my life purpose. That doesn't happen to me. What happens to me is that I pick up energy. And I'm like a sponge as an empath. I would call myself an extreme empath because I pick up everything. And I could literally be sitting at this desk and be affected by what is going on in the world. It's that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's more protecting my energy. And of course, if I'm with somebody and spirit comes through, whether it's with an idea or a thought or the energy of somebody who's passed, I'll often say, may I share something with you? Right. So, and 99.99% of the time people go, yeah, right. But in terms of protecting myself, like there are times where I do shut it off. And I'm like, I don't want to pick up anything. I just want to be a normal human,
Yeah.
even though my normal is different than, the normal of people whose gifts aren't open. And I do believe everybody's gifted, by the way. It's whether or not you have access to it and you develop that muscle. But I have to detox after I've been around a lot of people. And it's very interesting because as I've gotten older, I've become much more sensitive, much more sensitive. So I actually don't like to be around a lot of people. I really don't.
I'm sure.
I'm very choosy,
I'm
picky
sure.
about who I share my energy with. And I pride myself on being selfish that way. It's like, but if I'm doing a reading, I'll ground my energy and I have specific processes for that. I'll clear my energy. I'll call in my guides, my angels in a very specific way. And what's interesting is what I do is I tend to do pre-channeling. So anybody that's scheduled a reading with me, whether it's psychic or a mediumship reading, I will do pre-channeling, which means that I'll connect with the overall overarching message or the energy that they want to call in. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what's going to come through a reading. I'll just show up and share, but I'll get notes and then I share that with them. So I have to clear my energy a lot, whether it's in a shower or energetically, or I have a lot of different methods I use to clear my energy. but like I said, for me, I have to be very careful of my auric field, which is the energy field that surrounds each of us, because it's very easily permeated.
Wow. Are there any unique or surprising ways that like loved ones have communicated through signs, like that you've heard from clients or even maybe something you experienced yourself?
Yeah, I remember doing this reading where a brother and sister reached out to me because their mother had passed. And she's the sweetest lady. And so here I am sitting here, and they're across from me on Zoom because I do my work on Zoom. And she shows up, and she's just got one hand behind me on one shoulder and one hand on the other. And she's looking over my right. She's, "Oh, Janis, I'm so excited." And all of a sudden, we're talking, whatever, and she's showing up, and I'm using whatever language she uses and the gestures. And all of a sudden, I talk about a particular TV show. I go, "What does this have to do? What is this?" And they both just lost it. They're like, "We were just watching that show last night."
Oh,
And I said, "Your
Aw.
mom want to let you know she's with you." So it's things like that. I
Yeah.
don't know what these always mean, but again,
Mhm.
I don't filter. I just share. So there are things like that, or I mean, it could be anything. I'm trying to think offhand anything else. I think even just for me personally, it's when I smell my dad.
Mhm.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, Dad."
My we also see deer a lot, like on really interesting days. Like there was a day, about 6 months after Jared died, I had to put our dog down. And there was a buck that was just hanging out in the backyard in the corner, literally the entire day. Like, didn't get up until I left the house to go get the kids. And then Jared's mom came over because she was going to be there when I told the kids about Cosmo. And she sent me a picture when she drove up. Like, the buck is just standing in the yard. Like, he finally got
Wow.
up and he stood, like, I mean, and I told her, I was like, he's been there all day. Like, I tried to tell
And
you.
yeah,
Right. Like, I mean, yeah.
again, the signs and symbols can show up in so many different ways, but
Okay.
it's so unusual. Like when you think about it, it's so unusual, atypical. You're like, "Oh, you take notice."
Okay.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Fantastic.
and then another question. So my daughter finds coins all the time. And a lot of times it's like on a really like special day. We might be doing something special or, and it's like, oh, we wish daddy was here. Like how can I also like cultivate this with her in terms of feeling connected? I mean, we call them daddy coins.
I love
I don't know if that's like just like if I'm weird or crazy and just like pushing this on
No.
my children, but I mean, I want them to feel connected, but I also don't want to be forcing this. So it's like, how do you determine like a sign from just I know we don't like coincidences, but I don't know. Like,
I think I think that when you're able to make connections, like it's a special day and here's this coin we found. What's wrong with that?
right,
Right? What's
right.
wrong with that? What's wrong with believing that you're getting signs? Nothing.
Hmm.
Now, now if you're pulling stuff from thin air and you're like gut wise, you're like, "Man, I don't know if this is," versus I know when there's a sign. Like you could teach your child, your children, your daughter about how people who've passed communicate. And you say, "Daddy's always around you," and well, you may not, he's not here, or all you have to do is talk to him.
Hmm.
Just talk to him, because when we see these things like a bird or a coin or a feather, um, those are signs from spirit that daddy's
Hmm.
around. Right. And maybe you see other signs, and you could say when the energy, the soul of a person never dies. It's like an
Hmm.
energy ball. You could be very concrete. It's like an energy ball.
Yeah.
And the energy ball can never be destroyed. but it decides that it wants to be in certain bodies.
Right.
Daddy had a body, and the body stopped working, and so your daddy went to heaven, but the energy of daddy's still there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, we talk about like the part that we could touch is, is in the ground, and we go to the cemetery to visit, and then the part that made him kind, and the part that made him love us, that's the part that we say is in heaven. And he can see us. We actually have a thing in our house where it's actually next to Tooth Fairy land. So the tooth fairy in our home has actually met Daddy and has shared a couple of stories or items that Daddy wanted to send to them.
Oh,
So
I love
yes,
that.
yes. We were even watching a movie the other
Love
day, and it was
that.
like, yeah, like the tooth fairy's real, in a sarcastic way. And Jack just looked at me very serious, and he said, well, the tooth fairy's real because it's next to heaven. And I said, exactly. Like,
Oh,
yeah, I
yeah.
hope he
There's
doesn't hate me for this one day, but
No,
no,
never.
I think we do the best by our kids and try to help them make sense of what's happened when we, even as adults, have a hard time making sense. So it's
Correct.
very,
yeah,
very difficult. And when they get to a certain age, you'll explain more.
right,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with helping a child understand that there are that we connect with people that are in heaven. They don't have
Mhm.
bodies anymore, but they have energy and
Mhm.
light,
Yeah.
and we
Yes,
communicate
I love
with them.
that. The
I love
energy and
that.
light. Yeah. Wow.
So, Janice, if you could share one takeaway for listeners about grief, signs, staying open to connection, what would it be?
What would it be? The one thing I, you know, I'm going to say two things. One is we didn't talk about complicated grief, which is a
Oh,
Right.
that's a
whole
huge
other
one.
ball game, which is when a loved one has passed that you've had a complicated relationship with. How
Yeah.
do you how do you navigate that? And maybe we do that, right? We talk
Yes,
about
Yes.
we need a part 2 to
We
this.
need a part two for
100%.
sure.
I'm writing it
For
down.
part
sure.
two, because that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And so what I say to people in general versus those people who've had complicated grief, it's different. It's different. But to those that we're talking about, okay, who've had good, overall positive relationships,
Mhm.
either with their children who've passed, their parents, their husbands, their wives, siblings. Allow yourself to be open to receiving confirmation, connection.
Mhm.
Here's the thing, when we're choosing to stay in grief, then it's literally a block to receiving, right? Nothing's gonna be a sign, nothing's gonna make sense, nothing's gonna feel good. And when you choose to allow yourself to let go of grief, because wearing grief is not a banner. We don't need to wear grief. It's okay to move forward from grief. It doesn't mean that you won't, like I said at the top of our time today, grief doesn't end. It just changes, it shifts. Maybe it becomes less because you allow it to become less.
Right.
But my feeling is when the signs show up, just take them. Just
Yeah.
take them. What's
Yeah.
wrong with that? What's wrong? Why do you need fucking proof? Excuse my language.
Right.
No, it's true.
You see a feather? Oh, wonderful. I don't know who this is, but oh my gosh, a feather or a coin, or oh my gosh, that's a cardinal. And I may have 5 people who crossed over and I don't know which one it is, but it's somebody, and thank you, or I hear a song. Don't blow it off as a coincidence.
Right.
Allow.
Mhm.
The more you allow, the more your loved ones can communicate.
Mhm. Well,
That's what I would say.
thank you.
Well, this has
Yeah.
been amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. I look forward to
Truly.
definitely doing
I
part
know.
2.
Yes.
I feel like there's so much more to cover.
Mhm.
And so tell us how people can find you, because
Okay. Yeah.
everyone's going to want to find you.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a podcast called the Intuitive Therapist Podcast, and it's I think on all platforms. But if you want to go to iTunes, you can find it, the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. I have a book called The Intuitive Therapist, and while I wrote it for therapists, coaches, and counselors, many lay people have read it. So it really allows someone to really develop their intuition. And also, really, if they are a therapist, coach, or counselor, to really accelerate their work by learning how to identify their intuitive voice, trust their intuition to be able to help their clients faster. So that's another way. I have a YouTube channel where my podcast is called The Intuitive Therapist with Janis, I think it's Janis R. Cohen. And then my website is janisrcohen.com. That's JANISRCOHEN.com. And there you can access kind of my story, my services, or anything like that. So, yeah.
Love it.
Wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Janis.
Janice, this has been wonderful, and
This
I'm
was
sure, incredible. I'm sure everybody listening gained so much from you, and we look forward to having you back.
Yeah.
And so everybody out there, go open yourselves up and find those signs. I know I'm going to be looking for signs all day and opening myself up. And thank you for listening. Again, you can find us, our podcast, Grief and Grit, on all platforms. And we look forward to seeing and speaking to you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Janis.
That was awesome.
That was amazing.
It was absolutely
That was
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah.
So fun.
Thank you so much, Jan.
Oh, I had such a good time. And I would definitely love to do the complicated grief piece.
Yeah,
think
me
it's
too.
Huge one. Oh my God, because that one's a tough one. That's tough.
Yeah.
That is
Well, and it's what people are afraid to talk about. And I mean, given that you're a therapist, I'm imagining that that's a huge part of what you deal with.
Yeah.
Like the complicated grief. So yeah.
It's really, really tough, but there are ways to deal with it. But yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah,
We
thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you. And
This was such a pleasure.
I know, send us your bio
Yes,
and also so we can put again where everybody can find you.
The website's a
proud of
work
you
in
both.
progress, but yeah, I'll be adding it eventually. So stay
I'm
tuned.
proud of you. Really proud of you both. I'm
Thank
sorry
you, Jen.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you.
losses, respective losses, but look what you're doing.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank
We
you, my love.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
You got so much to be proud of, and your babies, your family, the world, they need this. They need
they
this.
do need it.
Thank you.
They do need it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
Thanks
means
for your
the world.
encouragement. Yeah.
Mwah.
My
Love
pleasure.
you.
Love
Thank
to
you
you both.
so
Happy Hanukkah
much.
when it happens,
You
and stay in
too.
touch. And I'll send that stuff to you.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
wonderful.
Take
Love
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Love you
Bye,
too.
Jen. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you love what you heard, please follow Grief and Grit and share our podcast with your friends and family.